Imagine a twilight so fierce it sets the heavens ablaze, a canvas of crimson and gold spilling over the desolate plains of West Texas. It was autumn of 1879, and as dusk draped its chilly veil over Lone Mesa, a humble log cabin stood defiant against the whispering winds. Inside, Rachel Garrett knelt by a struggling hearth, her hands roughened from the morning's labor of splitting wood, tenderly nursed a fledgling fire with brittle juniper twigs. Clad in her late husband's worn flannel coat, sleeves pushed back, she embodied resilience in the face of solitude. The shutters rattled with each gust, a reminder of the harsh world beyond her fragile walls. Suddenly, a knock shattered the stillness, urgent, raw, and unknown. Rachel's breath caught. As she rose, her pulse racing. Another knock, more insistent, echoed through the cabin. Her fingers trembled as they brushed the rifle by the door, but then a voice pierced the tension, broken with desperation. "Please, Milk, my son. He is dying." Her heart stilled. Could she turn away such a plea? With a steadying breath, she unbarred the door. There, framed by the fading light, stood an Apache warrior, towering and resolute, his hair bound by leather, his gaze a storm of silent anguish. In his arms, swaddled in a tattered, grimy blanket, lay a child barely alive, lips parched, eyes sealed in suffering. Behind him, murmurs of fear rippled through a gathering of townsfolk, their lanterns flickering like wary stars. "An Apache!" a woman spat, venom in her whisper. "Don't trust him!" But Rachel's eyes were only for the infant, its frail ribs stark beneath the cloth. Without hesitation, she stepped forward. "Give him to me," she urged. The warrior's reluctance lingered, but her resolve held firm. "I have Milk. He cannot survive out here." With a gaze heavy with unspoken grief, he entrusted the babe to her arms, a moment so tender it seared her soul. Cradling the child, Rachel returned to the fire's warmth, unfastened her dress, and drew him close, offering life where death had loomed. As the narrative unfolds from the tense silence of the previous moment, Rachel guided the baby's trembling mouth to her breast. His lips, frail and uncertain, stumbled at first, then clung with a desperate grip. A shuddering breath escaped her, the warmth of the infant's faint exhales against her skin, unraveling her composure. Tears traced silent paths down her face as the child began to nurse, each tiny pull at her heart a reminder of life's fragile persistence. Nearby, the Apache man knelt by the weathered door, a statue of exhaustion. The fire's flickering glow danced across his face, illuminating deep lines of weariness and the raw, crusted wound near his collarbone, a testament to battles fought and endured. "You saved him," he murmured, his voice rough with unspoken burdens. "You saved us." Rachel offered no reply, only drew the child nearer, her gentle rocking a silent lullaby. The baby's minuscule hands twitched, as if grasping at dreams. "What is his name?" she asked, her voice a tender whisper. "Elan," he answered. "Elan Nantan." "No, wait," he faltered, pain shadowing his words. "He was born Taklashim, but we have not spoken that name since his mother passed." Rachel's heart constricted, a pang of shared sorrow. A sudden gust of wind battered the shutter behind them, while outside, voices simmered harsh murmurs cloaked in self-righteous fear. Cradling the child, Rachel rose and stepped to the open doorway. The townsfolk loomed in the shadows, their eyes cold. "He's just a baby," she declared, her tone unyielding. "No child will go hungry under my roof." Silence met her defiance. One by one, their lanterns dimmed and turned away. Inside, Elan Nantan slowly unfastened a leather cord from his neck, a single feather dangling from it, broad, streaked, tipped with darkness. "This is red-tailed hawk," he said. "In my tribe, it signifies protection for those who nurture life." Rachel gazed at it, then at him. "I didn't do this for gratitude," she said softly. He nodded, resolute. "Still, it is yours now." With reverence, she accepted it, her fingers trembling as if it might sear her skin, and placed it beside the sleeping infant. The fire crackled in the quiet, a fragile peace settling over them as the baby rested, unaware of the world's harsh edges. A tear slipped down Rachel's cheek as she cradled the boy, his breathing now a gentle rhythm against her heart. She glanced at Elon, her eyes searching his, then dropped her gaze to the small life nestled close. "I don't understand what this means," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper in the stillness. "Nor do I," Elon replied, his tone soft, almost lost in thought. Nor do I. But listen, he breathes. In that fragile quiet, the jagged edges of mistrust and sorrow seem to blur, if only for a moment. Bathed in the warm, wavering light of the hearth, a warrior and a widow shared a silent vigil by the same fire. The tender sound of a child nursing filled the hollows where dread once lingered. No more words passed between them that night, yet something unspoken had taken root, a bond that neither battle, rumor, nor the bite of winter could sever. A week slipped by, and the days shrank as the winds grew fierce and unrelenting. Rachel Garrett no longer marked time by the arc of the sun or the glow of the moon, but by the steady rap at her door each dawn. There stood An Nantan, draped in a threadbare wool blanket, the child she had named Nathaniel cradled in his arms. He lingered at the threshold, entering only when beckoned, though the baby's cries had grown softer, less desperate. Color bloomed in the child's once pale cheeks, and his tiny hands now reached for her face with eager trust. Rachel's arms opened instinctively, and Nathaniel nestled into her embrace as if he had always known her warmth. "You gave him a name," Elon remarked one morning, his voice low as he watched her feed the boy in the rocking chair near the flickering flames. "I couldn't just call him nothing," she replied, her fingers tenderly tracing the baby's silken black hair. "Nathaniel, it means gift of God. Doesn't that feel true? Isn't he a miracle in all this darkness?" Elon's gaze stayed averted, but a faint nod betrayed his agreement. Later that day, Rachel stirred a pot of pinto beans and smoked venison over the fire, the sharp scent of dried chili mingling with the simmering broth as she sliced it into the mix. She kneaded cornbread dough with wild, quiet hope, her heart stirring with something new. Continuing from the tender exchange of the previous day, Rachel had traded for honey with a wandering merchant, a small treasure in her sparse pantry. When Elon returned that afternoon to fetch Nathaniel, she carefully folded 2 precious slices of bread, drizzled with that golden sweetness, into a worn cloth and pressed them into his hands. "For the journey," she murmured softly. He paused, a shadow of doubt crossing his face. "You owe me nothing more," he said, voice low, but Rachel shook her head, her gaze steady. "This isn't about debts. I give because he's hungry." Her eyes flicked to the boy, then back to Elon. "And so are you." With a silent nod he accepted, his glance lingering on Nathaniel. Nestled in a makeshift cradle a drawer Rachel had painstakingly lined with soft wool. That night, as the fire dwindled to embers and the child slumbered peacefully, Rachel found herself at the window, cradling the last sips of her bitter tea. The moon cast a pale, silvery glow over the endless plains. Her weary eyes searched the dark, expecting only the familiar outlines of gnarled trees and wind-sculpted hills. Yet there, under the crooked shadow of a cottonwood, stood Elang, a silent sentinel in the night. She didn't reach for a lamp or call out to him. Her breath hitched, not from fear, but from something deeper, a mix of guardianship and unspoken connection. The next dawn, after Elon had taken Nathaniel and melted into the hills, Rachel trudged to the well for water. Upon her return, something caught her eye beside the cradle. She knelt, lifting a tiny object with trembling fingers. It was a horse, carved from rich dark cedar, no larger than her palm, its legs captured mid-gallop, mane flowing as if caught by an invisible breeze. Every detail sang of care elegant, powerful. A minuscule leather strip adorned its back, as if awaiting a rider too tiny to exist. Turning it over, she saw words etched into its belly with meticulous precision. "So, he will remember his courage always." A gasp escaped her lips. Rachel pressed a hand to her heart, overwhelmed. Could a mere carving hold such weight, such promise? The child stirred softly in his sleep, unaware of the silent vow now guarding him. As the gentle cooing of Nathaniel filled the quiet room from his cradle, Rachel's heart stirred with a tender ache. That evening, when Alan returned under the cloak of twilight, she was waiting at the threshold, her eyes bright with emotion. In her hands she held the wooden horse, its craftsmanship a silent testament to care. "You carved this," she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "Yes," Alan replied, his tone understated yet profound. "It is beautiful, an Apache symbol. This horse embodies freedom, raw strength. Our people gallop beneath the boundless sky. My son must carry this spirit, even as he grows among your kin." Rachel gazed at him, her eyes searching his for a long moment before stepping aside. "Come in," she invited softly, her words a fragile bridge between their worlds. Hesitant, Alan crossed the doorway, stepping into her space for the first time. He settled near the hearth, the warm glow casting shadows across his weathered face, while she held Nathaniel close. Silence wrapped around them, broken only by the fire's restless crackle. Her eyes darted to him, then back to her child. "You're not the man they paint you to be," she murmured, almost to herself. "I am shaped by the land," Alan answered, his voice steady. "But I have never brought harm to your people, not once." She nodded, a quiet conviction settling in her chest. "I believe you." Beyond the cabin walls, coyotes wailed into the vast, lonely night. Within, a different kind of flame kindled not just in the hearth, but in the tentative roots of trust. It grew not through bold promises, but in humble gestures. A shared bowl of soup, a hand-carved horse, a man standing watch in the dark, not to menace, but to protect. Rachel felt her home swell with a warmth she thought had long faded, a whisper of family. The fire dwindled to embers as the wind clawed at the cabin, a restless beast seeking entry. Stirring the coals with an iron poker, Rachel watched them flare crimson, then fade. Across from her, Alan sat with knees drawn up, hands resting lightly, while Nathaniel slumbered peacefully between them, his tiny fist curled around the wooden horse. Breaking the stillness, Rachel's voice emerged, soft yet resolute. "Had read." As the echoes of the past lingered in the air from our earlier exchange, her voice trembled, barely louder than the whispering wind. "My son, Elijah, had hair like the faint glow of a burning autumn leaf, so delicate and fleeting. He was only 6 weeks old when the fever struck." Alan remained silent, yet his eyes stayed fixed on her, unwavering, as if bearing witness to her pain. "I tried everything in my power-cool cloths pressed to his tiny forehead, bitter willow bark tea brewed in desperation. For endless hours I cradled him against my chest, praying my warmth could banish the icy grip, stealing him away." Her gaze drifted to the flickering flames, lost in memory. But it wasn't enough. A heavy silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken grief. Then, softly, she continued, "My husband left 3 months after. He couldn't bear to live in a home that felt like a tomb." The earth seemed to hold its breath as Alan reached into the pouch at his waist, retrieving a small bundle wrapped in weathered deerskin. Without a word, he placed it in her hands. Rachel unfolded the covering, revealing a square of coarse linen, aged and stained by time. At its heart, embroidered with golden thread, shone a sun, its long, delicate rays stretching outward, stitches uneven yet tender, crafted by a devoted hand. "My wife," Alan murmured, his voice steady but low, "stitched this for our son's naming day. He never saw it. Soldiers came under the next moon. She died shielding him. Both were taken before the ground thawed again." Rachel held the fragile cloth as if it might shatter. "In our tribe," he went on, "this mends what words cannot. So she once told me." Rachel's throat tightened. "And now you bear the son." Alan's jaw clenched. "Sometimes I feel I carry only darkness." She reached across the cradle, her fingers grazing his. "You brought him to me," she whispered. "That was a light." His eyes fell to their fleeting touch, then lifted to the sleeping child. "I feared you'd turn us away. Could I have been wrong to hope? I thought I had nothing left to offer, my spirit drained to its dregs." The fire snapped and hissed, flinging defiant sparks into the dim room. There we sat, two souls weathered by grief, yet somehow unyielding, no longer shattered. Rachel, with tender precision, folded the worn cloth once more, slipping it into the soft pleats of her skirt. "I'll guard it with my life," she murmured, her voice a fragile thread of resolve. "I swear it." Elon gave a solemn nod, and as the wind wailed like a banshee beyond the cabin walls, Rachel rested her head against the rough-hewn beam at her back. Elon, ever silent, fed another log to the hungry flames. No words passed between us that night, none were needed. Some silences bear the weight of entire histories, and in that quiet, something delicate yet unbreakably fierce began to sprout. What was it? A whisper of restoration, townsfolk or messation, too tender to name, yet too real to ignore. News spreads like wildfire in Lone Mesa. By the 4th day, Rachel sensed the shift in the air, the way folks lingered on the dusty path beyond her cabin, their hushed voices cutting sharper than the desert breeze. "They say she's tending to a redskin's child," one muttered. "No, not just tending, raising him as her own," another hissed. "Has she gone mad?" The rumors swirled, tainting the town like soot on clean linen. That afternoon, the thunder of hooves shattered the oppressive stillness. Inside, Rachel cradled little Nathaniel, his warmth pressed to her heart. When the sound of boots striking parched earth echoed outside, a gruff, furious voice barked her name. "Rachel Garrett, get out here this instant!" She emerged onto the porch, the babe nestled in her arms, his tiny lips seeking comfort against her shoulder. The air was thick with the scent of hay and grit. 6 men loomed in her yard, led by Amos Dillard, the feed store owner, his fists balled tight, his face a mask of raw anger. Behind him stood Caleb Nix, and the weight of their judgment bore down like a storm ready to break. How could they understand the bond she'd forged, the promise she'd made? As the tension from the previous confrontation lingered in the air, Henry Barlow stood before Rachel, flanked by 3 others whose faces were mere shadows of familiarity to her. Their rifles, slung over their shoulders, gleamed with a silent threat. "You're turning your back on your own people," Amos snarled, his voice quivering with barely contained rage. "Harboring that Apache, nourishing his child. Have you forgotten the horrors they unleashed here, the raids, the rivers of blood?" Rachel's gaze fell to Nathaniel, asleep in her arms, his innocent face pale and serene. "I know loss," she murmured, her voice a tender whisper. "I don't need your reminders of its bitter taste." "He's not one of us," Caleb bellowed, his words sharp as a blade. "That child doesn't belong." Rachel's response was steady, unyielding. "He's a child, and he's hungry." With deliberate grace, she descended the steps, her bare feet pressing into the sun-warmed earth, and faced the men head-on. Nathaniel stirred, a tiny hand reaching out. Without a moment's doubt, Rachel adjusted her shawl, cradled him closer, and offered her breast. A collective gasp swept through the men, a chilling wind of shock, their rifles quivering in unsteady hands. Rachel raised her chin, defiant. "This child is no enemy, but are you becoming mine?" A suffocating silence descended, heavy as a storm cloud, broken only by the slow, deliberate crunch of footsteps along the side road. Rachel tensed, her weary eyes tracking the sound. Then Miriam Quinn appeared, widow of the town's first preacher, her gaze sharp and unyielding, a small covered pot weighing down her hands. Wordlessly she crossed the yard, ignoring the men's scowls and mutters, and placed the pot gently on the step. "Chicken stew," she said softly, "with barley for the baby, for the mother." Her eyes met Rachel's, then softened on Nathaniel. "Feed him! Isn't that the sacred duty of a mother?" With that, she turned and strode back down the road, her posture resolute, fearless. The silence that followed was deafening, the weight of the day pressed down harder than the relentless midday glare. Amos spat into the parched earth, his voice a gritty whisper as he growled, "This isn't finished." With a sharp turn, he stormed away, his heavy steps stirring clouds of dust. The other men trailed behind, their boots scuffing the ground, abandoning the scene, leaving only the simmering pot and Rachel's unyielding spirit in their wake. Long after their figures vanished into the horizon, Rachel remained rooted, cradling Nathaniel as he nursed, his tiny fingers clutching her shawl with innocent trust. The pot of stew basked in the fading warmth of the late afternoon sun, a silent witness to her resolve. When Nathaniel finished, she swaddled him with tender care and hefted the still warm pot inside. That evening, as Elon returned, weary lines etched into his face, she ladled out a bowl of stew and placed it before him without a sound. He settled by the dim glow of the lamp, his gaze cautious yet piercing as he took the humble meal. The cabin was steeped in the comforting aroma of broth and barley, yet an unspoken fragility hung in the air, fragile as a whispered secret. Elon ate in measured silence, each spoonful deliberate, setting the empty bowl aside. He fixed his eyes on her. "They came today?" His voice was a low rumble, heavy with concern. "They left," she replied, her tone soft but firm. His eyes flicked to the cradle where Nathaniel slumbered peacefully. "And the woman?" he pressed. A tired but steadfast smile curved Rachel's lips. "A bowl of stew, a few gentle words, that was enough." Elon gave a single nod, a profound understanding flickering in his gaze. "Kindness can outshine fear, but only if we dare to choose it." Her hand found his, and his fingers enveloped hers, warm and unexpectedly tender, weaving a quiet bond between their disparate worlds. Behind them, the fire crackled softly, embers glowing like fleeting hopes against the shadowed cabin walls. Outside, Lone Mesa loomed, its silent judgment hovering like an unquiet spirit. Yet within these walls, a mother, a child, and a man tempered by battle sat united in a delicate harmony, tethered by the bold choice to embrace compassion over dread. As dusk deepened, the last slivers of light stretched thin across the brittle grass, and the wind began to sigh. As the night deepened, Rachel felt the eerie hush descend. The cricket's chorus snuffed out like a candle in the wind. In his cradle, little Nathaniel stirred, his soft whimpers piercing the stillness, not from hunger, but from an unspoken dread, as if even his tiny heart could feel the ground shudder beneath them. By the flickering fire, Ellen paused in his task, the whetstone still against the blade of the tool. His head tilted, ears straining to catch the distant rumble boots crunching earth, horses snorting, voices murmuring with menace. Then the thunderous knock rattled the door. "Rachel Garrett, this is your only chance. Open up." Rachel rose from her chair, her pulse hammering like a wild creature caged within her chest. Elon was already at the threshold, a towering, silent sentinel. "No," she breathed, not out of fear but with a steely resolve. Her hand rested briefly on his back, a quiet plea. "Let me face them." With a nod, Elon stepped aside. She unlatched the door, pulling it wide to reveal Amos Dillard, flanked by 6 grim-faced men. Among them stood Ethan Cole, his long rifle slung across his chest, his expression a volatile mix of rage and sanctimonious zeal. "I warned you," Amos hissed, his gaze flickering between Rachel and the looming figure at her side. "Now you've forced our hand." Ethan edged forward, his voice a venomous snarl. "Hand over the Apache and the boy." Rachel stood unyielding, a rock against the tide. Elon moved into the doorway, unarmed, yet exuding a quiet ferocity, no weapon needed when his very presence was a blade of its own. "You don't belong here," Amos spat. "Not with her, not with that child." Elon's silence was a wall, unshakable and chilling, more potent than any outburst. Ethan sneered, "Speak, savage, or are you too craven to face your fate?" Still, Elon offered no words, only a single step forward, placing himself as a shield between Rachel and the threat. His breath was steady, his gaze locked on theirs, unblinking. Ethan's hand twitched, itching for violence. How could mere silence provoke such fury? Could you please provide the content from the previous section, Part 10, so I can ensure a smooth transition in tone and context for Part 11? Without it, I'll proceed with the rewrite, assuming a tense atmosphere leading into this moment. Here is the rewritten text, crafted with vivid imagery and emotional depth, aiming for approximately 309 words with a formal yet passionate tone. The moment unfolded with a terrifying swiftness. Ethan surged forward, perhaps to seize the child, perhaps to shove past Elon, but his intent was cut short. Before his fingers could graze the threshold, Elon's hand snapped out, unyielding as iron, clamping around Ethan's wrist. With a single deliberate twist, he forced the man to his knees, the rifle crashing to the floor with a hollow thud. The others froze, pinned by the weight of Elon's piercing stare. "This child is not yours," Elon declared, his voice a quiet storm, resonating with unshakable resolve. "Nor will he ever be." His gaze shifted to Rachel, then back to Ethan. "She is his mother, and I claim him as my own." Rachel's breath hitched, caught in the raw intensity of the words. Behind them, the fire snapped and hissed, a restless witness to the stillness that gripped the room. Ethan yanked his arm free, his face contorted with fury, yet he dared not rise. Amos edged forward, hesitated, his lips parting and sealing in a silent struggle before venom finally spilled out. "You'll rue this day," he spat, his words dripping with menace. "Every last one of you." Rachel drew herself up, her spine a rod of defiance. "Your fear holds no dominion here, Mr. Dillard, nor does your authority." Amos glared, his eyes darting from her to Elon, before he turned sharply. "Let's go," he barked, and one by one the men trailed after him. Ethan lingered last, nursing his wrist, his muttered curses staining the air. When their footsteps faded, Rachel eased the door shut, her body sagging against its solid frame. Elon lifted the fallen rifle, placing it against the wall with a tenderness that belied the moment's violence. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice a fragile thread. "No," he replied, steady and sure. Her eyes searched his face, the face of a man who needed no blade, no raised voice, only the quiet strength forged in countless trials. "What you said," she murmured, barely audible. "Was it true?" Elon's gaze softened, a rare warmth breaking through. Could words alone bind a family? He reached toward the cradle where Nathaniel stirred, a faint sound escaping before he settled once more. "You've nurtured him, held him." "Stayed through every storm," Elon said, his tone resolute. "No tie of blood could make you more his mother than you already are." "And what of you?" she inquired, her voice a tender thread in the quiet. "I would have given my life for him," he replied with unwavering resolve. "So yes, I am his father." There they stood, a trio bound by unspoken vows, a woman who once mourned in solitude, a man who believed his tribe's tale had faded into shadow, and a child born amidst flames, nestled in the embrace of those who dared to choose love over lineage. Beyond the cabin walls, the wind sighed and shifted, yet within the air remained a steadfast sanctuary. Elon, warrior of the Apache, rested his hand on Rachel's shoulder with a gentleness that spoke volumes, as if whispering, "We do not flee the inferno, we face it as one." Above the ridge, the moon ascended, its silver light spilling over the rolling hills, bathing the modest cabin in a serene radiance that promised more than mere refuge. Within, the fire simmered low, its amber glow caressing the room with warmth. Rachel stood barefoot beneath the ancient beam spanning the ceiling, her presence a quiet strength. In her grasp, she held the carving knife Elon had entrusted to her days before. Her fingers clenched it with purpose, while her other hand steadied the blade against the wood. Slowly, with reverent precision, she etched each letter NathanIeln. She breathed the name into the stillness, embedding it into the beam's grain, directly above the cradle where he slumbered, tiny fists curled, breath soft as whispers. "There," she murmured, her voice a caress. "Now these walls will hold his memory too." Behind her, Elon stirred in the chair by the hearth, his face drained of color, sweat beading on his brow. Blood seeped through the cloth, binding his thigh, a wound from the deer's desperate, final thrash. Yet he had borne the creature home despite the pain. Rachel turned, her heart tightening at the sight. She crossed to him, knelt at his side, unwound the stained bandage, and reached for a clean rag, dipping it into the basin with hands that trembled not from fear, but from care. How could she not tend to the man who had stood as their shield? As the steam rose from the bowl of boiled water at their side, she moved with deliberate care, her hands tender yet firm, though her heart quivered with unspoken fears. "You should have waited," she murmured, her voice a soft reprimand as she dabbed at the raw wound. "You should have let me take your place." His response came steady, unyielding. "I've hunted since my first steps. The deer would not pause for you." A faint, wistful laugh escaped her lips. "Oh, stubborn soul." He remained silent, though the corner of his mouth lifted in a ghost of a smile. She finished cleansing the injury, her fingers deftly wrapping it in clean cloth. They lingered a moment longer on his skin, sensing the creeping heat of a fever that loomed like a shadow. "Elon," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. His gaze met hers, his eyes deepened by the flickering firelight. "I am not afraid to love you," she confessed, her words trembling with newfound courage. "Not anymore." A quiet shift stirred within him. His hand, rough and weathered, rose to cover hers where it rested on his leg. "You gave my son a name," he said, his tone raw, with an emotion heavier than any wound. "You gave us both a home." Rachel fought the lump in her throat. "Elon," she started, but he was already reaching for a cord around his neck, adorned with small, time-worn beads. He untied it and pressed it into her palm, a necklace of dried corn kernels, polished to a warm golden glow, interwoven with turquoise and carved wood. At its heart lay a single white seed, flawless and pure. "For you," he said, "so the land knows you belong to it now." Rachel gazed at the treasure, her breath catching. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "What does it mean to your people?" Elon's voice softened. "Corn is life. It rises from the earth, nourishes our kin, binds the past to the present. This white seed," he touched it gently, "is rare. It signifies blessing, endurance, a promise of what continues." As her fingers closed around the delicate gift, Rachel pressed it against her heart, a silent vow woven into the gesture. "And you would entrust this to me?" she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. He nodded, a quiet strength in his gaze. "You're not merely nourishing my child," she continued, her words heavy with gratitude. "You're sowing a legacy that will outlast us both." Tears shimmered in her eyes, spilling over as she declared, "Then I shall wear it with pride." Slipping the necklace over her head, she felt its gentle weight settle against her collarbone, still warm from his touch, a tender yet potent reminder of their bond. Outside, the wind whispered through the tall grasses, a soft lullaby for the night. Nathaniel stirred in his slumber, a faint murmur escaping before he drifted back into peace. Elon eased into the chair, his breathing steadying as the fever's grip began to loosen. Rachel nestled on the floor beside him, her head resting gently against his knee, a quiet intimacy in the dim light. "We'll plant come spring," she murmured, her voice a thread of hope. "Corn, beans, squash, the three sisters as your people cultivate." He gazed down at her, his stern features softening with a warmth rarely seen. "And Nathaniel will grow sturdy alongside them," she added with a faint smile. "I etched his name into the beam tonight," she confided, her tone reverent. "So this home will always bear his memory." Elon closed his eyes, a whisper escaping him. "It already does." They lingered in stillness, the fire's crackle a comforting hymn, moonlight weaving through the window to dance with the gentle cadence of their breaths, a harmony of hope and renewal. Rachel's fingers traced the necklace at her throat, her eyes fluttering shut. Deep within her, something had taken root, not merely love, but a profound sense of belonging. Tomorrow, the world might barge in with its harsh judgments and shadowed fears. But tonight, there was only this warmth, the name immortalized in the wood above, and the unshakable truth that a new family had been forged, not by blood, but by raw courage. A family the land, the stars, and their defiant hearts would never forget. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Miriam's urgent warning pierced the quiet. "They are coming tonight. Amos will not delay." Rachel's heart thundered in her chest, a storm of dread rising within her. As the echoes of their hurried departure lingered from the cabin, they scrambled to gather essentials: a worn knapsack, Nathaniel's soft blankets, a modest loaf of bread, and a handful of jerky. Elon, with steady hands, secured a rugged leather sling around the baby's cradle, ensuring its safety. Moonlight, delicate yet resolute, poured through the open doorway, casting a pale glow to guide their escape. Together, they stepped into the night, Rachel cradling Nathaniel tightly against her chest, while Elon, rifle in hand, hunched low, ever vigilant. Their footsteps crunched on the brittle grass as they crept toward the timberline, the forest rising before them like a sacred sanctuary of shadowed giants and whispered secrets. Elon forged ahead, guiding them into the heart of ancient woods, where towering trees swallowed the sound of their passage. In the distance, owls hooted, their mournful cries piercing the stillness. Nathaniel let out a faint whimper, but Rachel soothed him with a tender hush, as if breathing her own fragile hope into his tiny frame. They reached the creek, its waters half frozen in the chill of the season, shimmering like a silver thread woven through jagged stones. Elon hesitated, then gestured for Rachel to ascend a rugged path out of the valley. As they climbed, Nathaniel slipped into a light slumber, nestled against his mother's warmth. But danger lurked beyond the creek's edge. Moonlight betrayed the glint of a rifle barrel, and shadowy figures, dozens of them tensed along the bank. Amos and his men had set their snare. Elon urged Rachel back against a moss-covered stump, his voice a fierce whisper. "Stay. Protect him." Rifle poised, his gaze turned to iron. Amos emerged, his sneer illuminated by flickering lantern light, taunting them with venomous words. "Come out, Apache white woman, and your brat. We'll drive you off." Elon's grip tightened, knuckles pale against the rifle stock. Rachel, clutching Nathaniel, shut her eyes, her pulse thundering. She saw flashes of turquoise necklaces, her name etched in wood, the fragile dream they'd nurtured. Could they lose it all now? Yet in that heartbeat, her courage flared like the first light of morning. Elon braced himself, his stance unyielding, his face a mask of defiance. A ghostly breeze rustled through the pines. Then, a gunshot shattered the silence, not from Amos's ranks, but from behind. A burst of torchlight flared, and a towering silhouette stepped onto the bank. Reverend Jonas. As the tension from the previous encounter lingered in the crisp night air, a new figure emerged from the shadows of the forest, Clay trailing behind him, a man bearing the unmistakable gleam of a federal badge. "Sheriff Valid," he announced with sharp authority, his voice cutting through the stillness. A federal marshal. Rachel, her eyes still clouded with tears, blinked in disbelief. Elon, exhaustion etched into his frame, eased the grip on his rifle, a flicker of hope stirring within him. Reverend Clay strode forward, his voice resonating like a bell in the darkness. "Stand down, Amos. This family is under our shield." Amos, his face contorted with shock and raw anger, glared at them. "This is Rangerland. They lost that fight." he snarled, defiance dripping from every word. But the marshal's response was unyielding, a wall of resolve. This child, his mother, and his father are under federal protection. Take one more step, and you challenge the might of the United States. A ripple of unease passed through Amos's men. With a venomous spit to the ground, Amos hissed, "We'll remember this. You haven't seen the end of us." The marshal's hand rose, a silent command. "Leave now. This is your only warning." Amos's gaze burned into Rachel, then Elon, before settling on the marshal with a final sneer. With a curt gesture, he signaled his men to retreat, their boots pounding the earth, lanterns swaying like ghostly orbs until they melted into the night. The moonlight bathed the scene once more, the forest exhaling a sigh of relief. Reverend Clay, his coat speckled with frost and fallen leaves, approached with concern, softening his stern features. "Are they harmed?" he asked, his voice trembling with urgency. Elon, kneeling by the creek under the silver glow, inspected his torn thigh, blood seeping through shredded fabric. A full year had slipped by since that fateful night by the creek, where blood and justice intertwined beneath the moon's watchful eye. The seasons had rolled over the crimson hills of Lone Mesa, and Rachel's cabin had transformed, not merely in timber and stone, but in the warmth of its soul. A vibrant garden now flourished behind it, and each dawn, laughter spilled from the porch like a melody. Rachel had breathed new life into the old smokehouse, turning it into a humble one-room school. There, half a dozen children, Apache and settler, united sat on benches she and Elon had crafted with their own hands. With chalk in hand, she taught them the magic of letters and the logic of numbers, her heart swelling with every small victory. How could such fragile hope endure amidst lingering shadows? Yet, in that tiny room, a brighter future seemed to take root. As the echoes of the previous day's lessons lingered, those of tracing symbols in the earth and speaking with tenderness, the family's bond deepened. At dusk, little Nathaniel wobbled out to greet the returning figures, his tiny hands clutching painted pebbles and scribbled masterpieces, his face alight with innocent pride. Within the walls of their home, a profound stillness reigned. Day after day, Elon poured his soul into crafting, shaping timber from the towering pines he had brought down with his own strength. His hands, once acquainted only with the weight of weapons, now caressed the wood, smoothing its grain with the tenderness he had rediscovered. The crib he fashioned stood as a testament to his transformation, solid, gleaming, and exquisite. On its side, he carved Apache symbols of wind, safeguarding, and fresh starts, each stroke a promise. On a serene Sunday morning, he placed the crib beside Rachel's bed, his deep eyes shimmering with unspoken joy. That night, as the heavens unveiled their starry tapestry, Elon guided Rachel to the fire circle behind their humble abode. Paper lanterns dangled between ancient trees, casting a soft glow, while baskets of wildflowers intertwined with sage released their earthy fragrance into the balmy air. Nathaniel, perched on Miriam Quinn's lap, toyed with a ribbon, oblivious to the moment unfolding. Rachel's gaze met Elon's, curiosity dancing in her eyes. Then, with a reverence that stole the breath from the night, he knelt on one knee, revealing a silver ring in his palm, its surface etched with Apache words that flickered in the firelight. "You speak with your heart, Rachel," he murmured, his voice a gentle caress. "Will you stand with me, not as mine, but as my equal?" Her breath hitched, and in a heartbeat she knelt too, her arms encircling his neck, drawing him near. "I am already home," she whispered. A sacred silence enveloped the gathering, soon shattered by joyous warmth as Reverend Clay stepped forward, not as a minister but as a witness, while Miriam ignited the first lantern. Their union was unadorned yet profound. Rachel wore a dress crafted by the Apache women Elon had quietly summoned from the hills, adorned with beadwork in hues of soft blue and white, mirroring the endless sky. A sash, woven with Elon's tribal emblems, encircled her waist, and her hair flowed free, untamed with the spirit of the wild. What greater bond could there be than this, forged in firelight and whispered promises? Under the vast Texas heavens, they stood beneath a rustic arch, crafted from weathered wood and entwined with untamed vines, a testament to their journey. Words felt unnecessary in that sacred moment. Their hands, clasped tightly in the flickering firelight, spoke volumes. Children scattered vibrant petals around them, while lanterns ascended into the night, shimmering like celestial witnesses pulled from the sky to bless this union. No longer outcasts, no longer running, they had found their sanctuary in each other. As the last lantern drifted upward, Elon guided Rachel into their humble abode. There, beneath the sturdy crossbeam over their hearth, he took his carving knife and etched their names with deliberate care. Rachel Nantan Nathaniel. Stepping back, he gazed at her with a quiet intensity and whispered, "This is our home now." Rachel traced the carved letters, her fingers lingering on the rough grooves. So understated, yet so profound a mark, not merely of names, but of a deep, unshakable belonging. Outside, the lanterns continued to glow, casting a soft light over the land. Inside, laughter and warmth filled the air, a stark contrast to the hardships they'd endured. Beneath that boundless Texas sky, two wounded hearts, once shielded and scarred, dared not just to endure, but to truly live, intertwined as one. Can you feel the power of such a choice? Have you ever witnessed love triumph over every barrier? If this tale has stirred your soul, if you felt the blaze of love igniting in the darkness, we greatly ask for you to linger with us. Subscribe to Wild West Love Stories for more heartfelt journeys where rugged paths lead to tender connections, where unspoken emotions carry more weight than words, and where even the wildest frontiers bow to the might of love. Countless stories still whisper in the winds. Join us on this ride.